Welcome to another edition of Anglican Unscripted. This is episode 927. I'm Kevin Kallsen.
I'm George Conger. Today is August 5th, 2025.
Welcome to another edition of Anglican Unscripted. We're glad you could join us. This is our happiest place. Well, not always happy, because not all the news is happy, but most of the time this is our happy place. Recently, not so happy. It's kind of been our Eeyore place recently. Oh boy, I'll talk about the ACNA. But in general, it's a happy place. Let's see. Before we get started, like this episode. That really helps with the algorithms. It kind of lies to Facebook and YouTube and lets them know that this is a really, really good show when we know it's kind of just a mediocre, kind of okay show. But you're helping us. We appreciate you donating your likes. Share this program with family, friends, and foe if you're not done so yet. Subscribe. Only half of our viewership, 52%, are subscribers. I don't know. What are you expecting? How can you know there's not a new episode if you're not subscribed? Especially with the latest news going on, you're going to want to be subscribed to the episode. And finally, go to the comment section. The comment section is where all the action happens. It's where you tell us what you think, and we really appreciate that. Keep on doing that. George, how you doing this week?
I am busy. School year starts in 2 weeks, so I've been reviewing Sunday school curriculum, contacting parents with children, reminding them that they need to be here, all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed for the start of the school year, and just the rhythm of life continues in a rural parish.
Sure. Same here in Maryland. I've been doing some projects around the RV. I took all the batteries out yesterday and replaced the new chassis batteries. And batteries are heavy, George, in case you didn't notice. So I'm deadlifting these 60 to 80-pound batteries in and out of the bay. And I feel it today. Today is an Advil day, nothing feels right. But I got... Jill came home from work and she was very proud of the work I did in the RV. And that's not easy to get a compliment out of our wives sometimes, George. So it was a good day.
I think she probably was more surprised that the lights were turned on.
You did something. Whoa. So, I'm coming out of retirement to fix the RV. All right. So let's go down to our first story. Story number 1. Lesbian Archbishop of Wales, Sherry Vaughan, has been elected the 15th Archbishop by the House of Bishops. Now, our first reaction is, between George and I, is what took so long? Okay. Why did it take an extra 5 or 10 years to have an archbishop who has same-sex attraction, George?
This is it's a surprise, but it's not a shocker in any way, shape, or form. No. It's a symbolic gesture. Sherry Vaughan is 66. And so she has less than 4 years, at the most 5 years, to serve as Archbishop of Wales. So her election was a statement by the church in Wales that they want to be first. They're going to do what they're going to do. It's not a surprise. The Welsh church is in pretty poor shape in terms of attendance and income. It is a dying church. Sure. It's when they do these statistics in the UK, those congregations that'll be extinct the soonest, church in Wales is always up there. Jerry Wales came to the church in Wales from the Church of England, and she was one of the first women ordained priest, a deacon and priest, and she had a high-flyer career in England. She was on the Archbishop's Council, and it was always known that she was a partnered lesbian, but it was a don't ask, don't tell situation, where she was living a lifestyle that, according to the canons of the Church of England, she should not be allowed to do. But she always had bishops who would basically avert their gaze.
Well, you say avert their gaze. She told The Guardian that she would lie.
Oh, yeah. That she had, she spent years lying in the Church of England about her living arrangements and her sexuality. I'm sorry. it's more on her living arrangements. The sexuality that she would be attracted to someone of the same sex is neither here nor there. Yeah. It's how, if she acted upon it and lived upon it. Well, she's elected Archbishop of Monmouth in southern Wales. And she follows in a situation where the prior bishop I think he wound up in jail. I mean, it was just a bad situation for abuse and everything. And she was brought in as a nice, safe pair of hands and as a statement by the Archbishop of Wales, look how progressive we are. And at the time, I wrote to the Welsh press office saying, well, I'm told by people who know her from the Archbishop's councils that she's in a partnered same-sex relationship. Oh, well, we're not going to talk about that. So the church in Wales 5 years ago wasn't ready to trumpet this information. Well, once she got into office, then she started attending Pride meetings and holding Pride Eucharists and talking about her own life journey. And now she is the Archbishop of Wales. And it is being touted not as the results of merit. Frankly, merit, in other words, is she the best person for the job? No one's really said that. Well, she might be the best person for the job, given the 5 candidates they had to choose from.
I mean, of course.
But merit really has nothing to do with this situation.
Yeah,
it is one of the last gasps of the old DEI, as we would call it in the United States, diversity, equity, inclusion mentality, that we need to have a woman archbishop. She's a woman. We need to have a lesbian archbishop. She's a lesbian. It's too bad she's not in a wheelchair or a racial minority of some sort. She's English, which might be a racial minority for Wales. I don't know. And the results are predictable. Global South put out a statement almost immediately. GAFCON has put out a statement. Nigeria has put out a statement. Alexandria, Semi Shahada, has put out a statement. Sydney, Kanishka Raphael, has put out a statement. And these statements state the obvious, that this is contrary to Christian doctrine, and the teachings of the Anglican world are agreed statements. Same stuff we heard about Gene Robinson. And the sad thing is, it doesn't matter. The church in Wales as a whole is the size of a moderate to small Nigerian diocese, okay? It really has it's not even a blip on the Anglican radar in terms of demography.
However, well, let's be honest. If she shows up at a primates meeting somewhere, half these primates are not going to show up. Yeah.
In other words, but that's the way it was before. Mm-hmm. But before, it was because the Justin Welby was a liar and a hypocrite. Mm-hmm. Now it's because we're not in fellowship with someone whose lifestyle contradicts what we understand the charism of episcopacy to be. She is not to be a trailblazer for women's rights or gay rights, whether you're for them or against it. That is not the job of a bishop or an archbishop. The job of a bishop is to preserve the faith and guard his doctrine. And here is somebody who seeks to subvert its doctrine and seeks to hijack where it's going.
And has lied about it in the past. Yeah.
And so it's not George and Kevin saying she's lied about it. She told this to The Guardian and The Telegraph and other newspapers. So at the end of the day, it's almost a so what. It's a so what. It's a one-day story that really won't change any facts on the ground. Wales will continue to hemorrhage members. The gay lobby in the UK, which in the Church of England, which is as devious as its counterpart in the Episcopal Church, will use this as another lever to achieve their aims. She's saying, oh, I expect any day now that we'll have gay marriage, gay church weddings and things. And so that'll be added to the cry, well, we have a legitimate archbishop across the border in Wales promoting this. Why can't we be, as sophisticated as our brethren in Wales? You know where it's all going.
We do.
But yes, it's all going to hell. But,
they have arrived, but all right, let's go on to story number 2, another disappointing story. We're going to talk about the Bishop Ruck trial. The facade is cracking. The Bishop of South Carolina, the Bishop of Pittsburgh have dissented from the College of Bishops statement backing Wood's handling of the case. And we're starting to see that everything the Archbishop's office said initially about this quick little get-together online of the College of Bishops was not wholly accurate, George.
Yeah, during our filming of last week, the College of Bishops statement and the Executive Council statement, the ACNA, backing Wood's handling of this was released. Mm-hmm. And the statement said all available evidence was presented to the bishops and the Executive Council. And they said Wood had done the right thing. And it implied certain things that we've since found out not to be true. Chip Edgar was the first one, Bishop of South Carolina, was the first one to break the
break ranks.
Break ranks. He said, I didn't sign this. I abstained from voting because we didn't have all the facts, and I'm on the Provincial Appeals Tribunal, and I can't be adding, my voice to something that may come before me. And shortly thereafter, Alex Cameron, the Bishop of Pittsburgh, did the same thing. Now, Pittsburgh and South Carolina are dioceses ordained women, so we've not along the traditional, pro-women, anti-women divides, whatnot here. Mm-hmm. We have two men that out of conscience and out of desire for moral clarity said, no, what the ACNA press statement doesn't quite represent the fullness of facts. Well, we investigated deeper, and we found that a number of bishops abstained. In fact, all the bishops who were on the Provincial Appellate Tribunal abstained. Many were on vacation. Others disagreed. And we asked for, would you have a vote tally? No, we don't.
So, what? Well, wait a minute. This is 2025, George.
No, but we can't know who voted unless unless we have people, the ACNA office tell us that, yes, others abstained, which we've not confirmed, but not who. Mm-hmm. Or individuals say, yes, I abstained or voted no.
Well, what a great opportunity for people in our audience, especially clergy, to email your bishop and say, what did you vote on this and what did you vote? And put in the comments what kind of answer you get.
Now, one of the things was that this statement that all available evidence in quotes, mm-hmm. was presented to the bishops and the Executive Council. Rachel Thibault, in her letter, public letter, points out this is false because nobody talked to her. Nobody asked her any details, any, evidence, any documentation to support her statements. And her statements essentially were that the presiding officer of the trial, who is not the president of the court, which is Bishop Brian of what is Stuart Wood's diocese?
Midwest. Sorry.
No. Bishop Brian, who's also an assistant bishop to Chip Edgar. He's the president of the court, but he's not the presiding officer. Mm-hmm. A month before the trial, this person went to the chief operating officer of the Anglican Church in North America and asked to see the prosecution's files, particularly the files on the investigation of Rook. And this was signed off, and Archbishop Wood signed off. But they didn't tell the prosecution, and they didn't tell any other members of the court. And Rachel Thibault said that when the trial came up, this person, the presiding officer, then used this information that was not in evidence, had not been tested. It was basically the raw police file or grand jury, things.
Investigation stuff,
been subject to any sort of verification process or anything like that. This person brought this into the trial, and the tenor and tone was to basically say that Ruck was being railroaded, that it was a faulty investigation. So you had a member who was the presiding officer of the trial, essentially throwing the trial in favor of Ruck for an acquittal. And I've been asked who this was, and the ACNA said, well, we're not telling you because the trial court, who's being run by Stuart Wood Suffragan, has decided not to release the transcripts and to impose strict secrecy. I said, okay. So you're not going to tell me the name of the person. Can you tell me who the roster of the court is? And they said, we have to ask the court. And the court says, well, we've been told we can't release any information about our proceedings, including who's doing it. So I was able to find from the last executive council meeting, the last provincial council meeting, the names of those people elected, including alternates. Mm-hmm. So I have that information. So one of those people is guilty of deliberately wrecking the trial. And then they said, oh, and by the way, Alan Runyon has signed a non-disclosure agreement, so he can't talk to you. And Rachel Tabeau, she shouldn't be talking because she had an employee handbook that said she had to keep confidentiality. But you can ask the trial court. The trial court says, well, we can't tell you because Wood's assistant said you can't know anything. Now, then we have the new prosecutor, which was sort of the point of it all, that Wood, instead of heeding the counsel of the senior Alan Runyon, the senior attorney who was prosecuting, that you've got to need a mistrial because it's been irretrievably tainted by this misconduct by one of the trial court members. Instead of declaring a mistrial and starting all over, Wood appointed a new prosecutor, Job Serebrov, who I believe is from the jurisdiction of the armed forces, I believe. And he is an archdeacon there. And the ACNA 2 people, ACNA TOO, who is a lay group that has been raising awareness of the issues in Upper Midwest. Sometimes I've not been keen on trusting them. Other times they've had things that have proven out to be 100% right. So it's like anything in this life.
They started out as hearsay, and now, thanks to the ACNA leadership, they're being empowered.
And ACNA 2 pointed out that there's a bit of a conflict of interest here because Serebrov trained at the Greenhouse Initiative. Mm-hmm. Now, we mentioned that last week, and somebody says, what has global warming got to do with this? No. Global Greenhouse Initiative was both a deanery in the Upper Midwest and a program to plant churches, to create new Christian communities, and to train clergy, some coming from other traditions. So Serebrov was trained through the Greenhouse Initiative, which came out of Ruck's diocese. And the ACNA 2 said, this is a bit of a conflict of interest. And so Serebrov said, I've never actually met Ruck. I've not talked to anybody about this, but even the slightest hint that there might be a conflict requires me to step aside.
Whoa, somebody did something right. This is
somebody did something right. And so Wood, instead of taking the hint that you've lost now 2 prosecutors and 1 assistant prosecutor, he asked the co-counsel, Thomas Krapps, who goes to the cathedral in Tallahassee, would he take over? And Krapps we assume is doing this. Now, what's the problem here? I've been getting emails from people, not thousands, but I've been getting emails and comments that, we talked about this in coffee hour on Sunday at our ACNA parish. This isn't a rarefied issue anymore. And I'm going to be hard-nosed to say, the Episcopal Church has money. The Church of England has prestige.
Had
prestige.
Mm-hmm.
The ACNA was known for its integrity. Moral clarity.
Known. That's a past tense.
It can't, Episcopal Church still has money.
Mm-hmm.
Church of England once had prestige. Can we now say that the ACNA has integrity at the very top anymore? Because I can tell you exactly. This is my guess. My guess, because I am not a crystal ball reader. They're going to find, when the trial's all done, they'll find Ruck guilty of one or two of the lesser charges. It'll go to the College of Bishops for sentencing, and they will sentence him to they'll admonish him or suspend him, and then say, okay, and for time served. Mm-hmm. So basically, the word on high from the Archbishop's office is just make this go away as soon as possible. Don't do justice. Don't seek the truth. Just let's get over this. Now, Wood inherited this problem from his predecessor, but the way he has handled it has made a difficult situation one where the integrity of the ACNA hierarchy at the very top is called into question, where I now have to parse what they're saying the way I have had to parse the Episcopal Church and the Church of England statements, where I begin by assuming that they're lying or withholding information.
Sure.
I never had to do that before.
No, in fact, everything up to now has been done in the open. We now have secret trial courts. We now don't get to know who's on the court, who's going to be in charge of the court and how it's handled. It's all done in secret. When we ask something simple, a vote that happened last week with the College of Bishops, who voted? Just who? Yeah, don't tell me how they voted. Who voted? Well, they all voted. Are you sure? Are you sure they all voted? Okay, not all. Most of them voted. And this is extremely disappointing. And this reminds me of the Episcopal Church 20 years ago. This reminds me of certain bishops within the Episcopal Church, which we can talk about when we get to that next story down the road of stories. We're still story 2. But we have come to a point in time where the best selling points of the ACNA we're not tech, and we're not the Church of England. We're not those guys. We have a common enemy in Catherine Jefferts Schori. We're going to do just fine. Stick with us. We are of the lion-hearted. And it grew. It took off. Now we get, 15, 16, 17 years down the line, and they're doing things that the Episcopal Church is known for doing. They're doing things that the Church of England is known for doing. And they're hiding things, and they're not answering questions in full, and they're giving you half-truths. If the senior office of a province is only giving you half-truths and hiding behind NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, you've lost the moral high ground. You've lost the ability to say, well, we're not the Episcopal Church. No, you are now the Episcopal Church. You have evolved from something glorious into something hideous. So just Kevin.
They're bad bishop. Men are fallen, corrupt creatures.
I am,
and so there will be bad bishops in every denomination. Mm-hmm. So that's not the issue. The issue is, how does the institution respond? And I would contrast this with, remember, Kevin, the furore over the former Archbishop of Uganda, who was basically caught in adultery. And rather than, and you and I reported this news.
We broke the story because nobody else was reporting it. We broke the story.
Yeah. We broke the story, and we were vilified by some sections of the Ugandan press and by some people in the United States. Don't, let sleeping dogs lie. He was good for us. Yeah, he's made a mistake. Let it go. And based on our reporting, the Archbishop of Uganda, who is actually the source of our information, the current one, went in and stated, brothers, we need to repent of this sin. And he basically confessed the leadership failures of the church and what they would do about it. And the result was the integrity of the Church of Uganda rose dramatically, much higher than it had always been good, but it even got better now because it didn't do what the cover up for the old boy network. Well, he's a buddy of mine. He did something stupid, but hey, got to balance the whole thing. No, the Church of Uganda said this is, fornication is a sin. Paul tells us, and he told us in last Sunday's readings from Colossians, those who fornicate will not make it into the kingdom of heaven. And that includes archbishops. Last week's readings had stuff about liars and slanderers. They will not make it in the kingdom of heaven. If we applied that standard to the current offices of the ACNA, who would make it into heaven?
Yeah. However, just like Uganda, it doesn't take a lot to get out of the situation. The "I am sorry" goes a long way right here. In fact, not saying sorry empowers your enemies right here. Yeah, the ACNA too, and all your detractors are completely empowered when you're not going to apologize here. All you have to do is say, "You listen. We looked into Rachel Thibault's documents. In hindsight, that was wrong. We apologize. Yes, it was brought up by a member of the court, what he found in those documents, leading to obviously what we should identify as a mistrial. We are sorry for that. We are going to declare a mistrial, and we are going to ask that all the members of the ACNA, clergy and laity, please keep the office of the Archbishop and the headquarters of the ACNA in your prayers." Sometimes we go off a little in reacting to all that goes on at the provincial level. I started out as just a regular clergy person leading a wonderful church. Then I was made a bishop, and then I was made an archbishop. And there's a lot going on in this world, and I can't respond to everything all at once. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Keep me in your prayers. And you know what would happen, George? This would all go away. Or let's stand behind our NDAs. No, it's not true. Okay. There were NDAs in the Diocese of Connecticut 20 years ago. I can't say that. I had not heard recently about NDAs being used for church officials until recently. That's just crazy. What do you have to hide? Well, what? A non-disclosure agreement at a church level is just crazy. But thank God we have other stories to go to, George. You ready?
Yeah.
Story number 3. The ACNA has appointed a new safeguarding chancellor, and congratulations on your new job. Welcome to the ACNA. Be careful what you sign. They're going to give you a bunch of forms, new employee handbook. Read it thoroughly. There's a lot in there you probably don't know. Maybe want to check with a lawyer before you sign it. However, what is her name? I didn't get that here. Well, whatever. So let's talk about the new...
it's not so much about her. It's about the ACNA Executive Council meeting created the position of Assistant Chancellor for Safeguarding. Mm-hmm. And it left the appointment to the Archbishop, Stuart Wood. And he duly made an appointment, and a press statement was put out by the ACNA that painted this person as basically a Southern sorority girl type.
A saint, yes.
Well, like, one of these mothers at a Christian school, just, that sort of picture you had. Then Mark Marshall, a viewer who has his own website, did a deep dive and looked at her public writings and statements and found that she was an anti-Trump Washington insider wokester. Now, there's nothing wrong with that.
No, we're okay with that. It does not disqualify you from the job, but we would kind of want to know that up front when you got the job. That these are your opinions.
When you paint somebody as Sweet Sally Sue from the deep, this way, and then you've got somebody whose other things that somebody pulls out showing that they have very pronounced political leanings and views that are almost indistinguishable from Marion Edgar Buddy, the Episcopal Bishop of Washington, it doesn't influence her job as safeguarding, because
No.
I don't think Donald Trump will ever come under the safeguarding regulations of the ACNA.
No.
But when you paint a picture that is not entirely accurate in the midst of a crisis of confidence in your transparency and veracity, you're not doing yourself any favors.
It's not her fault. This is the ACNA press release. All right, let's move on to story number 4. And we're going to talk about Incarnation in Williamsburg and its continued bust up. You have been on the phone talking to more people and getting more information. Backing up, we talked about this last week. My Bishop, Chris Warner, is overseeing this parish because it falls under his diocese, the diocese here, former John Guernsey diocese. And it's just a mess. It seems that Warner may have overstepped his bounds and tried to influence a bishop, a vestry that was clearly anti-women's orders, and he wanted this vestry to change its documentation, its bylaws, and come on board with the rest of the diocese to be pro-women's orders. I got that right? So, what have you learned?
Well, we reported on this story last week, and on Anglican Inc. we had published links to a lot of the documents that have come out. Since then, we've talked to people more intimately involved, and they asked not to be named because they want to get on with their lives.
Yes, it's time to move on.
But what they have said, I've been able to sort of check and find that they were being truthful. What we did not report was that, well, this parish and its appointed, the parish had an appointed minister because his predecessor left under dubious circumstances. And this priest and the vestry and the majority of the congregation were moving towards a view of women orders that was in the minority in the Diocese of the Mid-Atlantic. They did not believe women should be ordained. Well, it started with the priest being demoted from interim to vicar to this to that, so that he was under the direct thumb of the bishop. And then the bishop and the canon of the ordinary, Mary Hayes, began to speak to the vestry and tell them what they could and couldn't do. And the bishop had Zoom meetings with them saying, basically you need to get on board the program. And the parish said, well, maybe it's time for us to look for another diocese. And so they contacted Archbishop Wood, saying, what can we do? Can you help us? His office came back, we'll get back to you. And then they contacted the Commission on Common Life, led by Steve Breedlove. And that was formed by the ACNA Provincial Council in 2024 to sort of help with church planning and sort of all these sorts of things, but also to facilitate parishes moving from Diocese A to Diocese B over doctrinal and discipline issues, particularly the women's orders issues. Mm-hmm. And the commission came back saying, well, we can't do anything unless Archbishop Wood lets us. So you're basically out of luck. And the result was the parish has now collapsed. Over half the people have left. They've formed a new church. And the attitude evinced by Bishop Warner is what I recognize very clearly from 30 years ago in the Episcopal Diocese of Pennsylvania. It's the Charles Bennison phenomena, where Bennison came in, and Bennison was the one who broke all Bennison.
Every mold there was, yes.
Every mold there was, where, he believed he had a mission from God to educate these arrogant evangelicals. Mm-hmm. That's what he called it. I have to say a bit of it. When I was transferred to the Diocese of Pittsburgh to be rescued, Bishop Bennison's letter said that this man is an arrogant evangelical, which for the Diocese of Pittsburgh Standing Committee, that was good enough for them.
They'll take two things: arrogant evangelical or deposed by Catherine Jefferts Schori. Well, we'll take either one.
I wasn't deposed yet. That was before the deposition started. I was in that first wave of people being traded back and forth. Even though I stayed in Philadelphia, I was now under the jurisdiction of Pittsburgh. And then that's when Benison came in, and he stopped all that. And he stopped allowing steady Eddie McBurney from Springfield to come into the Forward and Faith parishes. Everybody had to be under the thumb and in the thinking of Charles Benison, which of course led to the whole Forward and Faith, names from the past. Yeah. Most of you may not remember because you're all dead. Yeah. David Moyer, the Episcopal Synod of America, and all these blasts from the past. The ACNA was founded in part not to repeat these sins of pride and foolishness. And now we're seeing them repeated in the Diocese of Mid-Atlantic.
Not just at the province level, but now at a diocese level.
Where the diocese is basically saying, well, fine, you guys leave, we'll rebuild the church because, Williamsburg is a growing area.
Yes, it is.
You're close to that. Mm-hmm. So, they'll come back, but we've got the property and we've got the name, and that's what matters. Friends, this is what the founders of the ACNA went through 20 years ago, and now one of their bishops is doing it to their own people.
Now, in pre-show, I discussed if this were the Diocese of Fort Worth in a reversed scenario where a parish wanted to hire a woman priest, how do you think they would handle it?
Well, they would be transferred to the Diocese of the Rocky Mountains or to C4SO or,
The first thing would have been a transfer, not a reprogramming of a vestry.
Yeah. And see, this is why it's, to me, an issue, because it's the bishop's ego here. And let's take the high road. The bishop appears to be acting in a way consistent with the idea that God has given him a mission to educate the poor benighted people of Incarnation Williamsburg about God's unchanging truth, is that women must be ordained to the ministry.
Okay. The unchanging truth was dual integrities.
Well, I thought the unchanging truth was, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. I don't see this in the creeds or the articles of religion or the Bible anywhere.
Yeah, I know.
Well, but so what we've got is we've got a situation where the mistakes of the past are now being repeated again. Mm-hmm. And the parish has filed a complaint with Archbishop Wood about misconduct by the Bishop Warner. And the Archbishop Wood's response, his office's response, because I don't even know if he's seen this thing, his office's response is, well, we'll just make it go away. Yeah. We'd rather lose half of a congregation to join another church somewhere in another place than to do the right thing.
Yeah. Now, a little follow-up to the story here. In the last 4 weeks, I've received 8 or 9 emails. Half of those are like, thank you for supporting women's orders, Kevin and George. We're glad you're on board with us. The other half, clearly, you don't support women's orders and are both misogynists. So we're still playing it straight, George. We're playing down the middle, and that's been one of the largest complaints we get in all this, is that we try to play report down the middle. We're stark with our language, indeed, but if half my audience, doesn't know one side or the other where Kevin and George's opinion is on this, I'm okay with that.
Well, we play it down the middle in areas where we have an agreement that we need to play it down the middle, dual integrities. Mm-hmm. Within the ACNA world, there's a dual integrity between those who support and those who oppose women's orders. We play it down the middle. Mm-hmm. The Episcopal Church today has dual integrities on marriage. I am a partisan on one side. I do not believe in the sanctity of same-sex marriage. I believe that's a sin and will lead to eternal damnation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I'm not being entirely. So Kevin, we have to say George is not entirely consistent. He'll play it down the middle in the ACNA's game, but he won't play it down the middle in the Episcopal Church's game. because I believe I do not believe women's orders is a salvation issue, whereas I believe human sexuality and the scripture is a salvation issue.
Same here. That you and I are one accord on this. I do not find women's orders to be a salvation issue. I do think when initially investigated, there should have been a litmus test. How do we know that this is really God's will? Let's test it. Okay. And I think there's certain provinces where the test would have failed. Just saying that in hindsight. Okay.
And perhaps I'm a pragmatist, or perhaps I live in a small town. Uh-huh. But I got to tell you, Kevin, the homosexuality issue and women's orders issue are probably number 35 and number 36 on the list of crises in the church. Teen pregnancy, drinking, spousal abuse, divorce. You know, I've got a lot of things that are more pressing and real than these two particular issues. It's not that they're unimportant, but they're not urgent in my pastoral work.
In fact, in after church discussions at my church, nobody talks about politics. Nobody talks about any of these pressing issues in the church. We talk about family. We talk about plans. We talk about encouragement in our life and other things going around in the church. These pressing issues that you and I talk about all the time don't really make it to the parish level, except a recent topic of Archbishop Woods, but that's different.
Well, you know, the thing that really we're doing, as I may have mentioned, we're doing a parish profile. Mm-hmm. Not that they're looking for a new priest, but because my plan is to stay here 25 years, and I'm halfway through that.
Okay.
And so what's the second half of my tenure here going to look like, and who is the church that we're of? And the preliminary data we're getting, it's coming in drips and drabs. Everything in a church doesn't happen when you want it to. It just happens. Yeah. Less than 10% of the people in my congregation are cradle Episcopalians. The vast majority are former Roman Catholics, then followed by former Protestants of this and that, and then some people who came from nowhere. And so a more real issue for me is ecumenism. We have people who worship with us, who are devout in their faith, who give regularly, and then they go up to Maine for 3 months, or to Connecticut or Wisconsin, and they go back to their old Catholic parish. So they're Catholics up north and Episcopalians down south. Or they're members of the United Church of Christ in the Chicago suburbs, and then they're members of the Episcopal Church here. Now, well, in other words, so I have more questions about Mary and indulgences and the Rosary. You know, if I can I pray the Rosary there but not here? You know, because of the changing nature of church going in the United States, where brand loyalty means nothing anymore. And this is not, I hate to say this because it sort of upsets the Chamber of Commerce. This is the part of Florida that the wealthy people from the nice suburbs don't move to. Okay?
That's correct. That is correct. Okay, yeah.
So we do not have a high natural Episcopal population. Mm-hmm. We're not the suburbs of a big city. We're not a college town. Mm-hmm. We're not, a place with a lot of professionals. Far from it. We're a place with electricians and carpenters and retired insurance salesmen. We're normal, what was once normal America.
Blue collar Americana.
Middle class, upper working class,
yeah.
And George. Ecumen, in others, understanding, what the Catholics do is different from what we do, why we accept some things but not other things in Catholics' life or in Presbyterian life or in this life or in that life, is more of a pressing because people have these misty memories of catechism from Sister Agnes Mary, 50 years ago. That's more real than women's orders or homosexuality and stuff. But hey, that may just be a local phenomena for Florida.
Who knows? George, let's move on to the next story. And it's a fun story because you and I are getting old. All right. You and I have things bother us that didn't really bother us 10 years ago or 20 years ago. In fact, I live here in an RV, which is all windows. Okay. At night, we close the shades. Nobody can see in. No big deal. In the morning, about 6 o'clock, we open up the windows and we see who's walking, who didn't walk today, who's got the new dog. You know, we're stalkers, so to speak. And that's who we are in our old age. We need to know what's going on. And we're kind of curmudgeons and cranky, and we just, you know, we have aches and pains. And this next story with the Bishop of Fulham, Jonathan Baker, who is, he's like us, he's old. He was probably the James Watt of his generation when he said, "That damn music's too damn loud," to a choir which was visiting his church where he lives. George, let's talk about this story. And we'll talk about it with apathy because we are there.
This was bumped from last week's show.
Yeah.
But Jonathan Baker, the Bishop of Fulham, lives at the church in Holborn in the rectory in the back of it. Mm-hmm. On a Saturday night, the church had rented out its facilities to a local community choir, and they were having a fun-filled festival choral evening. Mm-hmm. Started a little late and was running late. And at 10 o'clock, this man in a bathrobe and carpet slippers shuffles out onto, before they're finished, they're about to have the finale, he shuffles out onto the stage area and says, "You people go home. You're in my house and you're making far too much noise. It's after 10 o'clock. And now I can't confirm this, but somebody wrote, he shouted, "This is my house." And a member of the congregation shouted back, "No, it's God's house." But he made him leave. And it's just the perfect cranky old man in his bathroom telling you kids, get off my lawn. Well, this was a Facebook phenomena because of course pictures are taken. Yeah. And some people got righteously indignant and others people thought, oh boy, if you want to have the Church of England's brand as old fuddy-duddy farts in bathrooms and carpet slippers, this is what you do. But he subsequently wrote to the people and apologized and everything, but it just was a funny incident.
It was. He was probably in the back trying to listen to MASH, you know, on his TV, getting some episode up, and just couldn't hear his episode of MASH over the loud King Tranquillus choir out there, and had to go say something. Now, George, this isn't quite unbelievable to me at this age. You know, I get that, you know. At some point at 10 a.m. or 10 p.m., my body goes, it's time. Going to bed. I don't care if you got to make it from the couch to the bedroom. Come on, let's go. So I get that. George, next story, Gaza famine. Is it real or not real? Over the last 7 or 8 days, pictures are coming out of Gaza, or we're told they're coming out of Gaza. We don't, further investigations have revealed otherwise, that starvation is happening amongst the children and elderly because Israel is blocking the food blockades, the food deliveries from getting into the Gaza Strip. And we told you many times that Israel is responsible for the genocide of the Palestinians. Here's the proof. Look at these pictures. The New York Times had to backstep on these pictures because they were not of starving children, but of children with muscular dystrophy, and they got caught. And they said they're sorry, but they didn't say they're sorry on their Twitter account. They said they're sorry on their backup commercial Twitter account. So only 50,000 people got to see the apology, not the millions who are part of it. And it was every time a newspaper says story, they don't say it on the front page. They usually do it on page 7A, column 4. That's what they did. So you and I are in the struggle of what is the real news? Who do we believe? What can we find out? And you've written up several notes here because right now, France, UK, Canada are saying they're going to recognize Palestine as a state because of the genocide Israel is creating here. And that's big. You know, a two-state solution isn't a solution when one is your enemy.
Well, there already is a two-state solution, and that's called Jordan.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Until Yasser Arafat in 1968 said that we're Palestinians, before 68, these people in the West Bank and Gaza were considered Jordanians. But church leaders from Stephen Cottrell in New York, Thabo Makoba in Cape Town, the new fellow in Canada, and individual bishops, and even the Vatican have issued statements denouncing Israel in the harshest of terms. And as you pointed out, major newspapers in the U.S. and in Europe and TV networks have put these photos of these pitiful, starving, dying children up. And this has turned out, the news coverage has turned out to be fraudulent. And that the children on the cover of the New York Times or the Guardian or the BBC have cystic fibrosis, they have muscular dystrophy. There's a photo that went around the other day of this elderly man who was all skeletons, skin and bones. And, look what the Israelis are doing. Then the original photo, some pro-Israel websites picked up and blew out. And you see the man's wife next to him, who's grossly obese. I mean, morbidly obese. And his other family members, they're all fat and jolly. This man obviously has tuberculosis or some disease of wasting away. And what happened was that activists basically gave the willing fools of the New York Times and other places photos they'd taken off the internet or photos that had been doctored to show famine. Now, my personal belief is that there is no famine in Gaza. And on Friday, U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff went through Gaza, and he rejected claims of a famine after visiting. And he inspected aid distribution sites operated by the U.S.-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. And his quote was, "There is hardship and shortage, but no starvation." Now, Kevin, you sent me a link saying this hardship and starvation can be laid at the feet of one particular entity. What did the UN report?
Well, I went and did my research. I went to the UN website, and here you can see they're monitoring tracking of all the trucks that they sent into the Gaza Strip. And lo and behold, they honestly report, the UN, that 87% of these trucks have been hijacked by the Hamas. Well, I guess, the New York Times just doesn't have access to the UN, or major media here, networks in America don't have the internet capabilities to go to the UN website, which I did in 6 minutes after George said we're going to talk about this on Tuesday, and boom, it's right there. It says all our shipments are being hijacked by Hamas. Now, the IDF sent drones over Gaza and found out where these trucks are, and they're just not being distributed. All this food is there, being held, and it won't be distributed. It'll be sold for a high price, but that's it. Yeah. Now,
so my deeper thing is that, and we've had church, the heads of churches in Jerusalem, put out these inflammatory statements about Israel's deliberately doing this or that and the other. I don't believe any of it, because I've been covering this for 30 odd years, and I have been lied to or have read repeated false statements, going back to the El Dura, where the French TV reported Israelis, gunmen or soldiers were deliberately targeting Palestinian children as they were battling with PLO terrorists.
Yep.
And of course, that was a world sensation until it was shown to be a lie. The credibility of the patriarchs and heads of organizations from a news perspective is zero. They may be right sometimes, they may be wrong sometimes, but you can't trust them unless you verify. Now, do I believe every word that the IDF puts out? No. Do I believe every word that the UN puts out? No. What I do believe is that because this is an active war zone, I will not know the truth until this is all done.
Yeah, in fact, almost decades later, we're not going to know the truth,
And if I am to, now let's just pause for a second. There has been a civil war in the Sudan that started about the time of the Gaza fighting, where a militia and the army have been fighting each other in Sudan over control of northern Sudan. Since that time, the UN and other agencies have reported at least 250,000 people have died of starvation in the Sudan, most of them children. I don't see street protests about this. I don't see college kids at Columbia, saying no justice, no peace. And it might be because two Muslim groups are battling it out for the control of the Sudan, and the people are suffering and dying. It's only when there are Jews involved do people seem to get on their high horses. And when I see that anti-Semitism, and I'll call it that anti-Semitism, and I see it trumpeted by Christian leaders in the Church of England and the Episcopal Church, my low opinion of them sinks even lower. But again, I don't know what's going on. Yeah. And when you hear anything from Jerusalem in the Middle East or from the West Bank, you don't believe it. Now, I believe Steve Witkoff made this statement.
Yes.
Do I know that he's accurate? No. But hardship and shortage, but no starvation. Because of the lying pictures that supporters of the starvation claim have been found to have been put out, I'm more likely to believe Steve Witkoff, the U.S. envoy, than I am the New York Times.
The fog of war. But as Christians, we can pray for the situation, pray for those who are involved, and pray that God would intervene. And that's where we stand in that. We got one last story, and we got 5 minutes to report it. You and I have reported for almost 8 years, 10 years, about the falling of once big seminaries here in America. The big Episcopal seminaries have fallen on hard times. Some have closed. And it's a new time and foundation in the education of clergy, how it's done, how it's conducted, and where these seminaries can be located and how they can attract students. Right now, it's the heyday for Trinity Anglican Seminary in Pennsylvania. It's the heyday for RES Seminary in Philadelphia. It's the heyday for other seminaries around the world who figured out how to serve the student and raise up clergy. You have sent me a story that talks about Spurgeon's College. It's a 158-year-old Orthodox Baptist seminary in London is shutting its door. A Baptist seminary is shutting its door in London. What's going on, George?
Well, Spurgeon's College was founded in 1858.
A long time ago.
And it, by the noted Baptist preacher,
Spurgeon.
His first name, Spurgeon. Yeah. And its chancellor is Rick Warren. Now, in an English system, the chancellor is the titular head, sort of the honorary chair president. Mm-hmm. The vice chancellor does all the work. But its financial backing, it had a financial rescue plan because it's been running out of money. It's difficult and expensive to run a residential college for people training for the ministry. And this one is in the London suburbs, I think in I want to say Norwalk, but that's in Connecticut. Whatever.
You're way off.
Well, it's not in Connecticut. Well, the funding fell through, and the trustees basically said, okay, we're shutting down at the end of the month. And Rick Warren, with all his money and all his contacts, couldn't put together a rescue deal. Now, people would say, oh, well, George, in your time, Philadelphia Divinity School, General Theological Seminary, Episcopal Divinity School, Bexley Hall, Seabury Western,
Harvard, Yale. I can think of...
No. Not those schools I just named have all disappeared.
That's right. Okay, I'm sorry.
Harvard and the Yale are still there. But the standalone Episcopal Divinity schools in the United States have basically fallen on hard times, had to merge. Mm-hmm. The remnants of Philadelphia Episcopal and General Seminary are now part of Virginia Theological Seminary. What this is telling us is that unless there are deep pockets, the old model is dead. And Orthodoxy really doesn't have anything to do with this. because Spurgeon's college was as orthodox as they come.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, yes, you may not like Rick Warren on this or that, but he was a, Trinitarian, traditionalist Christian. If a college like that can't make it, then we know we're not talking about, people fleeing from craziness. We're saying that the system in which they operated is no longer working. Harvard and Yale will still be here because they're part of bigger universities that will keep them afloat. For now, Trinity Seminary and the Reformed Seminary are kept alive because they are basically the only options, as is Nashotah House for traditionally
which I forgot to mention.
Episcopalians.
I forgot. I'm from Wisconsin. I apologize to Nashotah House for not mentioning you. And that's what happens every time we do a story on seminaries, we get emails from the seminaries we forgot to mention that are still around. Sorry.
But things are, for me, I enjoyed going to seminary. I didn't learn anything. I already knew my Bible. I bought a lot of books that I haven't, some of them haven't cracked open in 30 years, 40 years. But the value of my priestly training came in actually hands-on work experience, learning from, in a mentorship, almost an apprenticeship in parishes, first in Connecticut and Philadelphia, then let me loose on the world. And I think we're seeing more and more of that, especially when more and more people, when I went to seminary at 28, I was one of the oldest people. Nowadays, I would be 10, 20 years younger than the average. 38, 40. Average age of ordination now is in the 50s in the Episcopal Church, I think. So the old model of kids straight out of college or with a year or two work experience, that's dead and gone. And the system that trained those people can't make it in this new world.
Well, they'll discover that through supply and demand. That old capitalist term. All right, that's it. That's all the stories. We covered it. I don't know if we've pissed off a whole bunch of people or made a lot of people happy, but that's reporting from Kevin and George. I'm Kevin Kallsen.
And I'm George Conger. And you've been watching episode 927 of Anglican Unscripted.